As college football has started up, everybody is talking about the college football playoff. There used to be only 4 teams, but now we've expanded the field up to 12, which makes things a lot more exciting, and everyone cannot wait to see who will make the field. 11 of the teams will likely be from Power 4 opponents, but that last slot will go to a Group of 5 team. That is a team from a smaller conference, and in today's video, I want to try to predict who will end up getting that slot. We're going to go through multiple Group of 5 programs, talk about their team and their chances of making the playoff, and ultimately who I think will get that spot. But before we get started, the college football season is here, and you're not going to want to miss out on all the great content we have, so be sure to take a quick moment to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the Group of 5 playoff contenders. So the first team we need to talk about is Western Kentucky. They're one of those teams that isn't getting a lot of hype this season, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're in Conference USA. Aside from Liberty, they haven't had many great teams come out of there the last few years, as they've been filled up with teams like Kennesaw State, who are just trying to stay alive. But the Hilltoppers genuinely bring a good team to the table this year. Tyson Helton has proved himself as one of the better coaches in the Group of 5, as he has a 40-26 record at WKU since 2019. They will have to replace Austin Reed, who is in the NFL, and they have a guy who has experience. TJ Finley started at LSU, Auburn, and Texas State, and he'll be pivotal to their success this year. Finley had the best season of his career last year with the Bobcats, throwing for over 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 8 picks. He will be on his 4th college team, and he has a couple of good weapons, such as Dalvin Smith, who finished with over 500 yards last year, despite the offense going through Malachi Corley. They do have a really tough schedule, though, as they start with a road trip to Bama, and then they also play Eastern Kentucky and Middle Tennessee, before Toledo, who's the frontrunner in the MAC. They also have games at Boston College, New Mexico State, and Liberty. They'll win some of those games, but even if they go 10-2, I don't think they'll be strong enough to get that playoff spot. Going over to the Mountain West, it's been a long time since a military academy school was in the running for a national championship. But given the strength of the Mountain West this year, and with resurgent programs like Boise State and UNLV, there's a possibility that the best Group of 5 program ends up being Air Force, especially considering the fact that head coach Troy Calhoun has been one of the most highly respected coaches in the field. Honestly, their schedule is favorable for going undefeated, as their toughest games come against Baylor, and they could be one of the worst in the Big 12. They also get to play Oregon State at home, and of course they play all the other military academies. The toughest Mountain West team they're going to play is San Diego State, who they get at the end of the year. There's a good chance they make it through the regular season undefeated, even after losing some of their production from last year, and if they win the Mountain West, there's a good chance they'll be ranked pretty highly. A 13-0 Air Force team with a unique offense might prove to be a problem for a Power 5 school in the playoff, and that's assuming they would get in, but I do actually think they'll have an undefeated regular season. Going across the country, we have to talk about Appalachian State. They've been quietly one of the most consistent football programs since they joined the FBS in 2014, and Sean Clark is now the head coach. Things have continued under him, and look to be even better this season in year 2, as Joey Aguilar is back at quarterback. He started 12 games for them last year and finished with nearly 4,000 yards and 33 touchdowns. The real threat, though, will come on the ground as Anderson Castle and Maquel Haywood return, and despite losing their star running back Nate Noel to Mizzou, their defense is also great, and they should be at the top of the Sun Belt. The problem with App State, though, is that their schedule is really tough. After playing Eastern Tennessee in Week 1, they then travel to play Clemson to take on the Tigers, and while they probably won't win this game, you can't rule it out, as they've beaten plenty of Power 5 opponents over the last few decades. After that, they play against a down East Carolina team, a South Alabama team that's in the middle of retooling their roster, and then Liberty, who's picked to win the Conference USA. If they win those games, they could be considered the best in the Group of 5 and should be in for a college football playoff appearance. If you would have told me a few years ago that UNLV would be one of the best Group of 5 programs in 2024, I definitely have looked at you funny. But that is where we are. Barry Odom rebuilt the team in just 1 year, and they kept Brennan Marion back at offensive coordinator, who helped create the crazy offense for the Rebels to run. Even though Jaden Mayava ended up going to USC, they still have quarterbacks in Matthew Sluka and Malik Williams, and they should be able to run the offense pretty well. They also returned one of the best receivers in the country in Ricky White, and got Casey Kane, a transfer from Texas. Their schedule is pretty tough, though. They start the season at Houston, they then have a tune-up game against Utah Tech, and then travel to Kansas City to take on Texas in a neutral site game. After a game against Fresno State, they'll play against Syracuse, who should be really good, as well as having other games against Oregon State, Boise State, and San Diego State. I don't think they'll have the same amount of success this season as they did last year, and I also don't think they're going to end up making the playoff, but they are in the running. At Texas State, G.J. Kinney has done one of the best Group of 5 coaching jobs in the last 10 years at Texas State. They look like a real threat in the Sun Belt, as they went 8-5 last year when they win over Rice in the First Responder Bowl. They returned pretty much most of the same team, as while they did lose TJ Finley to Western Kentucky, Jordan McLeod looks like the guy that they'll have on their center this year. This is huge because he was part of that crazy James Madison team last year, but did not follow Coach Sig to Indiana. He threw for over 3,600 yards with 35 touchdowns and played the same level of competition. He should be able to do the same in Coach Kinney's running gun offense, and at running back, they bring back a guy who ran for more than 1,300 yards. They also brought in UTEP transfer Deion Hankins, and their offense should be really good, and they have the weapons to win the Sun Belt this year if their defense holds up. The toughest game on their schedule is against UTSA, but the rest of their schedule looks pretty easy from this point. Even a game against Arizona State isn't that scary, since the Sun Devils are projected to struggle this season, and that's a game Texas State might actually be favored in. They ended up dodging the toughest teams, so there's a good chance they could go undefeated as well. Colorado State is another team that gets a lot of attention in the Group of 5, and a lot of that comes down to their star receiver, Torrey Horton. He's one of the best receivers in all of college football, as he's had 2 straight 1,000+ yard seasons at Colorado State. The main question is at quarterback, with being that Braden Fowler is going to be the guy, but he was inconsistent last season. They did win just 5 games last year, and I'm a little bit suspicious of them making the jump from a 5-win program to a playoff team, even with a good head coach like Jay Norvell. If they manage to land the upset against Texas in Week 1 though, things will change for them quite a bit. The rest of their schedule features games against Colorado, Oregon State, Air Force, and a sneaky good Fresno team. But they avoid the toughest teams like UNLV and Boise, and if they're able to win the tough games, they should walk into the Mountain West Championship matchup, and I don't think they're going to make the playoff, but they have a shot to be pretty good. Finally, we get to our last 4 schools, which I'm really excited for, and the first one is going to be Tulane. They ended up losing head coach Willie Fritz to Houston, but Tulane should still be one of the best teams in the American this season and push for a spot in the playoff. That's mostly because their new head coach John Summerall, who was really good at Troy and won 2 Sun Belt titles there with some pretty good defenses. They will have to elevate their offense after the departure of Michael Pratt, but they brought in former blue chip recruit Ty Thompson from Oregon, and in mop-up duty for the Ducks last year, he was pretty solid. He should be the starter, and you also have some help as Oklahoma transfer Mario Williams and Alabama transfer Shaz Preston are also playing there. But with question marks on the offensive line and pretty much the entire defense, Coach Summerall will have his work cut out for him in year 1. It's not exactly an easy schedule, as they play both Kansas State and Oklahoma this season, but once they get past those 2 power conference teams, the rest of the season has bumps in the road as they play USF and Memphis. There's a good chance they could go 10-2, but is 10-2 good enough to make the playoff? I don't really think so. A team that everyone thinks is going to make the playoff, though, is Liberty. Now we're going to get to the most popular pick, and that is the Flames. This is mostly due to the hype the program is getting, as they won Conference USA last year, beating New Mexico State in the title game, and they have a really good offense, in part to their head coach Jamie Chadwell and a star quarterback in Caden Salter. After originally committing and going to Tennessee, Salter would transfer to Liberty and has become one of the best Group of 5 quarterbacks. Last year he threw for over 2,900 yards with 32 touchdowns, and they also bring back running back Quentin Cooley, as he's one of the better backs in the country. They did lose CJ Daniels to LSU, but the offense should be fine. The main thing going in Liberty's favor, aside from their returning roster, is that their schedule is once again terrible. Their toughest game comes against App State, and then their next toughest game after that is probably WKU. They don't play a single Power 5 opponent this year, which might hurt them in votes, but it'll help if they blow everyone out. There's a really good chance they go undefeated, but it may not be enough in the eyes of the playoff voters, who want to prove they can actually play with the big boys. Finally, we get to the last 2, and the first one is Boise State. Everyone is super excited for Boise, mostly behind the legs of their star running back Ashton Jeanty. He ended up running for 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns last year, an average over 6 yards per carry. Interim head coach Spencer Danielson will also be leading them this season, after he ended up actually rallying them to the Mountain West Championship once they fired Andy Avalos. Their QB situation is pretty solid, as they had former 5-star recruit Malachi Nelson, but Maddox Madsen ended up winning the job. They're probably set there, and they also have Prince Strawn and former 5-star wide receiver Chris Marshall. But Boise State's schedule is pretty difficult, as they have games against Oregon, Washington State, UNLV, and Oregon State on the schedule. If they can win at least 2 of those and end the year at 10-2 with a Mountain West Championship, there's a chance they're looked at one of the better schools the Group of 5 has to offer. Finally, we have my personal pick, and that is going to be the Memphis Tigers. They have the best shot to make it to the college football playoff, and for starters, they bring back one of the most talented teams in the Group of 5. Seth Hennigan has been starting for a couple of years now at quarterback after throwing for 3,900 yards and 32 touchdowns last year. The Tigers ended up going 10-3, beat Iowa State, and they also returned Rock Taylor and Demir Blankensee. Both of those guys had nearly 1,000 yards receiving, and while the main issue will be their defense, I think they're going to be solid. They got a new defensive coordinator, and he might help with that. A huge factor into me thinking they're going to be good is that the toughest game on paper is against Florida State. At first, many thought the Seminoles were going to be a big challenge, but honestly, I was never really that high on them, and I think this is a game that Memphis could win. If Memphis is going to take that next step and make the playoff, that's a game they will win, and if they lose it, they probably just won't be good enough. The other games that are on the schedule include UTSA, UAB, and Tulane, but besides that Tulane game, nothing really moves the needle. If Memphis goes 12-0, Seth Hennigan puts up big numbers, and they beat Florida State, consider it pretty much a lock that Memphis gets that spot. There's really no reason to put a team like Liberty in over them. Honestly, Liberty or Air Force probably wouldn't get in over them. And then teams like Tulane and Boise State and App State just have too difficult of schedules. Texas State and UNLV also I don't think will get in. And overall, there might be some other random team that comes out of nowhere like New Mexico State last year, but my pick is going to be the Memphis Tigers, and I think this is going to be a big season for them. With conference realignment hopefully coming back again, I've always thought Memphis is deserving of a spot, but we'll just have to wait and see. But what do you guys think? If you're a fan of the Group of 5, let me know your favorite Group of 5 program, who you think will make the playoff, and what other topic I should cover next. Before you go, don't forget to also leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.